My name's Jacob Cody, and I'm the House of Worship marketing manager for Yamaha Commercial Audio Systems. And all that really means is that I get to do trainings like this all the time. And it's really fun. I grew up in the church in San Jose, California, and I used to mix there and operate our digital consoles there and our analog consoles, and I would help train our volunteers. And my first tech gig ever at the church was my mom would lead worship in the Marriage Builders group, and I would run the overhead projector with the transparency, right? Like the original tech, and then it kind of went on from there, and I started doing sound and everything. So I love the church. I have a huge passion to do this, just to really enable other folks, and kind of similar with Life Church, how they're just so known for their resources and giving them away. So I really love to do that, and I'm really fortunate that Yamaha lets us do things like that. They really recognize the need for this kind of stuff in the church, and they really want to make sure that the customer is educated. And even if you're not using a Yamaha console, I'd love to just get your info and be a resource to you if you have other questions. Or we're going to get into a little bit of mixing and things today, so please don't be discouraged if you don't have a fancy digital console or whatever. There's no reason why you can't get a good sound just by going through the basics and getting good mic placement and EQ and things like that. So a lot of the stuff that we'll talk about today is specific to this console, but a lot of it too, you should be able to go home and do it on anything that you're using. So at least that's my goal. So yeah, if after the sessions, please feel free to come get my info, and I'd love to connect with you guys. But today we're going to start off, and we're going to talk about basically the beginning of the console. Before we get into EQ, before we get into using it, we want to start just from the beginning and make sure that we're set up correctly and set up for success. So remind me one more time, how many of us are using digital consoles? A good portion of us. The rest of us on analog, right? Thinking about moving over to digital or something? Yeah, cool. Awesome. So a lot of us have digital consoles, but I've found that the more and more places that I go, the more of us may not be using them correctly, right? A really good friend of mine says, those of us who have digital consoles but are not using the recallable functions, or like, we just installed an elevator but we're using the stairs every time, right? So and it's surprising. I mean, yeah, okay, I can recall a scene, but there's so much more that we can do to help bring consistency and quality to our every week experience, so that and then we can use these tools to do that. So I really want to go through that and talk about it. So the first thing that we're going to do here is we're going to go over the console just really quick in a basic way, and we'll kind of get into this as the presentation goes. But so the console, like we said, you're looking at is the Yamaha's new CL5. Some of you in front of the 3 or the CL1. It's our new CL series digital mixing console, and the CL stands for Central Logic, right? And this is the part of the console that's what that central logic is. And you can access any input, any output, any mix, DCA, anything right from this center section, right? So you'll see here you got a few different buttons here. The select knob, right, for those of you that may not be on digital boards. Every digital console, the way it works, at least with these CL consoles and the M7s and so on, is that every channel shares one channel strip, right? So on an analog console, every channel has their own specific set of controls, your own EQ, your own aux sends, right? Someone's always come up to you on your analog board and, oh man, how do you know what all those knobs do, right? And we just know it's the same thing repeated over and over. So digital console, everything is on one channel strip, so you're going to select the channel that you want to make your adjustments to, and then make your adjustment, and then select the next channel and make your adjustments on that. We've also got the Q button, which is like PFL in the analog world. We've got our meters, we've got our on button, and our name display and color bar, and that's that part of the console. Over here we've got our scene memory keys and our undo key, so if we accidentally recall a scene, we can undo it really quick. And our scene preview key, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but essentially scene preview allows us to, without interrupting audio or changing anything, go in and look at another scene and make adjustments to it, whatever, without interrupting the show. So that's kind of handy. We've got our monitor level, which is going to act as your headphone monitors, or your headphone level when you're practicing mixing here today. And we've got user-defined keys, and we've got our bank selectable keys here. So our bank select keys, this is what's going to essentially change these 8 faders here to whatever that we want to look at. So we want to look at channels 1 through 8. We can select the input side over here, and now we're looking at either channels 1 through 8, 9 through 16, so on. If we go to the output side here, we can get to DCA 1 through 8, 9 through 16, any of our mixes, so on. So here we are looking at the macro view of the console, and this is our selected channel section. We've also got some user-defined knobs here. So similar to keys that can take us anywhere that we want to go on the console really quick, the user-defined knobs are going to be able to, we're going to be able to use those to control any parameter that we need to control really quick. So maybe it's going to be digital gain, or maybe it's going to be our sub drive on an aux, or maybe it's going to be whatever, so somebody's monitor. You can also be brightness and the lights. It can also be, by default, one of them is a touch and turn functionality, so you can actually touch whatever you want to control and then turn it. So it actually makes for a really quick way to operate the console. And so zooming in here on our selected channel section, we've got our mixes right here that we can use. This is a 32 output console, right? We've got 32 mixes that we can send our channels to. It's the exact same thing as an aux send. Yamaha just calls them mixes. So we have 32 of those in addition to our stereo and mono bus, so 35 total outputs. And again, the user-defined knobs here. But we've also got our gain. We've got 2 dynamics processors knobs. So a dynamics processor would be like a compressor or a gate, things like that. We've got a high-pass filter and a 4-band fully parametric EQ, right? And just so you guys kind of get an idea of how we're all wired here today. So this is a digital console that works with a digital snake system. So this would be our input rack. That's going to, you can see it right here on the stage. One of these might be on stage for you. You can also have other ones scattered around, maybe one up in your amp room or something. So this one, this is our RIO 3224, and that's got 32 inputs, 16 analog outputs, plus 8 AES outputs. And you can have a bunch of these going. We've also got a 16-channel and 8-channel versions, just to 8 in and 8 out only, so if you want to do a little bit of that. But the way this system is configured, by default, you might have a console in a kind of a star configuration where you've got a switch that goes out to multiple rack IOs, and you can also do it in a daisy chain way as well, which is kind of how we're doing it today. I'm coming out of the computer into the console, out of the console into these RIOs, out of these RIOs, daisy chaining all of these together, right? And so for our training purposes, you'll be able to see everything that's on this computer, and I can play tracks back to you. I can also record things to the computer, so this enables us to do what's called a virtual sound check. And we'll get into a little bit more of that later, but we're going to get a chance to mix today as if we were mixing a live performance. And that's kind of how we're talking to everybody and doing that. So, and yeah, that's kind of what we've got going on here today. So, basic operation here. The CL series has 2 main views that you'll be able to see on the console. One of them is the overview view, which you might be looking at now. It's basically showing you 8 channels at a time. So on those bank selectable keys on the center, if you select channels 1 through 8, you're going to be looking at channels 1 through 8 on the console. All of your mix sends, your EQ, your dynamics processors, and so on. If you want to see a zoomed-in view of just one channel and get a really good look at it, all of your selected channel buttons that are, or knobs that are on the left-hand side of the screen that you can use to change your EQ or change your mix sense, those are also buttons. So if you push down on any one of those, you'll get a zoomed-in view. And feel free to follow along if you want. You can do that on your console. But you'll see a zoomed-in view of your board here, and so it'll show you a zoomed-in view of your EQ. You can see closer up your mix sends and so on. If you want to see an even more zoomed-in view of your EQ, you can actually just touch the EQ window right there, and you'll see a pop-up come up that gives you a really nice high-res view of what you're doing. So we're going to go through a quick exercise here in setting up our console, but before we do, I want to just talk about a little bit of what we're going to kind of do to set this up. So we're setting this console up essentially from scratch. Now, I've pre-named a couple of things to kind of speed us along, but when we got our console, we're going to set it up. We're going to want to have something that enables us to have some consistency week to week, right? And that's an input list. How many of us work with an input list every week? Only a couple. Okay, cool. So an input list is a really great thing that we can use to either instill with our volunteers or also help us. And what this is something that has a track of every input that we've got on the console, what all those instruments are, what mics we're using, the names of the people that are going to be on that instrument, maybe even some notes like where they are, upstage right, downstage, so forth. And then maybe even some colors, right? And it's also going to show us, maybe tell us what subsnake that they're plugged into and things like that. So it's really important that we have one of these because it will actually help us when we configure our console prepare for the week-to-week service. So let's say that we're gonna build an input list for the next 6 months of things, right? Maybe that's how long our sermon series go, or that's usually how long it takes before we completely reconfigure the stage. Maybe for some of us it's a year. Maybe for some of us it's every month or two when we do it every sermon series. But whatever that interval is, and we're gonna meet up with our worship pastor and our lead tech humans and whoever the people are that need to make this decision. We're gonna say, okay, how many guitars are we gonna have maximum, right? Probably gonna have, maybe for Easter we'll have 4 guitars. Okay. All right. Maybe we'll probably use somewhere between 1 and 2, or maybe 3 sometimes. But we'll just put 4 on the list for maximum. How many keyboards? Well, maybe we'll just do 2. We'll do a keys and a synth, maybe, or maybe we'll do more. How many drums? Well, we might do 2 mics on the kick drum and a mic on the snare. Oh, we might do a piccolo snare every once in a while. So let's put that in, right? You kind of get what I'm talking about here. Let's find the maximum things that we're going to use. And we're gonna set those up all on our input list. That way, we're actually wired and prepared for any last-minute things that we know are going to happen. And someone says, you know what? We've got 2 guitars. We just want to do 3 this week because so and so wants to play. And cool. We're already set up for it. We weren't planning on it, but we're already prepared, so we're good to go, right? Because we know this is going to happen. And so planning for the unexpected is going to be another benefit of this too. But so if we're looking at our input list here, and I'll fast forward to it so that we can see it. So this might be an example of what your input list looks like. So the first column here is going to be our use column. So this is going to show us, are we using this week, right? So as you can see here, we've got some things like, oh, we've got an extra tom that we're not going to use, or okay, we're only using 2 of the guitars this week. So we can update this part week to week just to let us know, oh, this is what we're using. We can prepare for that. We can wire the stage this way. We can do whatever we need. The next column you'll see here is our 48 volt. This is our phantom power. What needs phantom power, right? And this kind of depends on the mic that we're doing, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later. But the next column here is our console input, right? So these are the faders on our console. These are the channels on the board. So we're going to live this 1-to-1, 1 through 48, 1 through 64, 1 through 24, whatever our inputs are. And the next column we have here is our stage input. So this is whatever the head of the snake is that's on our stage, right? This could be our Rio. This could be our actually no, I'm sorry, stage input. This is going to be our subsnake, right? So where on the stage are we plugging this in, right? We're going to have our main snake, which is in this case, our Rio input. That's going to live backstage. We're going to have subsnakes that go out everywhere, looms of cable essentially that we can plug everything into. So our stage input, maybe we're going to have, for the drums are going to be red, right? And that's the color that we choose. So the drums are red, and our subsnake is going to have red tape on it, and our drum mics are going to have red tape on it, and the cables are going to have red tape on it because they're all loomed together, and they're great. And we're going to wire up the drums with our red system, right? This is really great for volunteers, too, because that actually eliminates some of the technical knowledge that they need to have. All they need to know is this mic is red, it says kick on it, it can go on the kick. This is a red snake, everything that's red plugs into red. Oh, I've got a blue line and it's plugged into red. Why is that? That doesn't work, right? So it helps make things a little bit quicker for troubleshooting as well, especially when musicians come up and they have an issue. Oh, I don't know why this blue mic's not working. So we're going to label everything in red for the drums, and so these are our subsnakes. And then this is where they plug into the Rio, right, or this input rack that's on stage. Maybe it's going to be our master snake or whirlwind snake or whatever the head of the snake is. So we're going to label that. So essentially we might have, this is our green subsnake, so we're going to start over with green 1, and that's going to plug into 10, which is going to be our loops, right? Maybe we'll have blue 1 go into 12 and so on. And this is a really great way that we can actually kind of matrix together in our minds where everything's going. So then we've got the instrument here, so we can kind of know what exactly is going on. And it's really important that we can get some good familiarity with the terms that we're going to use. Some people call the overheads. Some people call them OH. Some people call them top. Some people call them drums left, right? Whatever the terminology is, let's just make sure we're all on the same page. The next thing you'll see here is our mic and our DI list, right? So this might be, this is a sub kick. This is a, beta 91. Maybe this is a beta 52, 57, so on. And this is how we can know exactly what mics that we're using. And the reason that we want to do this is because, one, these are the right mics for the job. But two, when we recall this scene next week, our drums are already going to be EQ'd and mixed and everything. And as long as we have the same mic in the same place, our sound is going to be really close. If we EQ this thing with a 52 and then we put a 58 inside of it because someone didn't realize that that was the wrong mic, our drum sound is going to be completely changed, right? That means more time spent sound checking, more time spent re-EQing everything. So this will help us really get some consistency going. You can also mark in their DI, right, and so on. So this will really help our volunteers as well. Then we can put down the musician if we like, and then notes. So we might put Peter here upstage right, and that's where he's gonna live. So this is an example of our input list, right? And we're gonna actually set up the console to kind of mirror this. So I've set up most of the channels here, but I want us to set up the drums. So if we go back to our console. We're going to essentially put these names and colors here so that it's easy to see and identify, and it's just going to match with everything else that we've got on our system. So if you look on the right-hand side of the screen here, you're going to see the name and the icon for the currently selected channel. No matter what screen you're in, you should see that window there. And you can use the little plus sign here to advance and go to the next channel. You can use the minus sign to go back. And so in this screen, if we look at this overview window, you'll see access for the channel patching and naming and everything right at the top and bottom of the screen. So if you look right here, channel 1, 2, 3, and so on, that's where we're going to go to make our changes to the channel. So if you guys want, go ahead and select that, and I'm going to jump here on the console and show you guys where that is here. So if I were to look at, go through 1 through 8 here, make sure I'm on my input side, 1 through 8, now I can see this overview window. So if I go ahead and just touch kick 1 right here on the first channel, I'm going to see this little patch and name thing here, and you guys can follow along. So you're going to notice that you got 3 tabs here down at the bottom. So the patch tab is where we can actually assign, tell our channels what input to pull from. Because our input list is 1-to-1, we're not really going to change that. Everything's patched 1-to-1 by default, so we're just going to leave that alone. But if we go over here to the icon tab, you're going to see a couple of new things that we can adjust here. So first, you're going to see the colors. This is where we can select what kind of color we want, pretty obvious. And we can make our choices there. And then we're going to pick an icon. And the reason that we pick an icon is not necessarily so that we see a nice picture of the kick drum, but when we select kick or we select snare, we're going to see a list of sample names here down at the bottom of the screen that we can use to quickly name the channels, right? So if I were to hit kick, I can just touch kick right there, and it's going to rename my channel to kick automatically. I don't have to worry about typing it in, right? Then I can go on to snare and hit snare and so on. If I want to do something specific, like I want to say kick in, or maybe I want to say kick 91, or I want to say Jake's guitar or something, then I can go in. If I just touch the name here, it's going to come over to our keyboard, and I can just type kick in. Pretty simple, right? If I want to set up something really quick to be able to be repeated over and over, I can actually copy and paste. So maybe I'm setting up vocal 1 through 6, right? So instead of, maybe if let's just do that, vocal 1. But I want to do 6. So instead of typing in vocal 1, 2, 3, 4, so on, if I want, I can just actually touch and drag there to select vocal, and I can copy it, and then I can go to the next channel, paste it, or clear, and then paste, and I've got vocal right there, so I don't have to retype all that. So again, that's just click and drag, or touch and drag essentially, and that'll actually kind of highlight that for quick configuration. So what I would like you guys to do now, we're just going to go through, and we're going to name all these channels really quick. And let me go back to our kick drum here. We go kick, in, and then again, you can just hit here on the right-hand side of the screen, hit the little increase or decrease to get to the next channels, and just name those first few channels of that drum set. I think, if I fast forward to the input list here, you'll see exactly what it is that those are. And we can just label those really quick. So what I want to do, it's okay if you're not finished, we can come back to that in a minute. But the next thing that I want to do is talk about grouping these channels together. So the first thing that we'll probably want to do when we start setting up this console is that now we've got everything labeled. We're going to want to link some channels together, right? And I've done a couple of these for you already, but the reason we want to link channels together is, maybe we want to be able to make adjustments on one channel and have it follow on the other channel. So maybe overheads we might want to link together. That way, when we set our high pass filter and do some of our EQ, it'll kind of be mimicked. Maybe if we want to do our synthesizer, we can link those two together. We can still pan them left and right, but we want, if we make a change on one, we want it to follow on the other. So linking them together is a really simple process. So the quickest way to do that is that if I were to pull up here, I'm going to pull up channels 10 and 11 here. You can also do this on the left-hand side, but I'm just going to do it in the center so you can see it. If you just hold the two select channels together for a minute, or just for a second, it's going to bring up this channel link mode here. So I'll do that again so that you guys can see. We'll just hold down the first select button and then the second one just for a second. And it's going to bring up this little window here, right? So everybody see that? So this is our channel link mode, and now we're in a link assign. So if I want, I can just select these two channels again, and now they're linked together. And I can see all the parameters here on the screen that I want to link together. So let's say I want to link everything together, but I don't want to link the faders. Well, I can just find fader here and deselect that. And so now the EQ will follow, but the faders won't follow, right? Or maybe I want everything to be linked, but I don't want to link any of the send parameters. So I can do this, and basically what I do in the what I send out to our mixes won't be linked together. It's just going to be the actual channel. So whatever I decide that I want, I'm just going to leave it all selected because that's probably the most common. And so now that we're linked, we can find other channels that we want to link. So maybe we're going to do the synth, right? So if I go over here to synth, I can link theyese two together, and they're already linked, but I can link those. I can also do our overhead left and right. So basically, if I just select my left overhead and my right overhead and just select those together, you'll see the same thing. So we can have multiple different link groups essentially, and they can all be set to whatever their own individual parameters are. Everybody following pretty good? So when we're done with that, we can hit the close button, and now we're back. Now we're going, and you can see that my fader. Here, I'll do these ones. My faders are linked together here, and that's pretty great. So, but let's pretend these are my overheads, and well, you know what? Now that I think about it, my overheads sound really good, but the right one is a little bit too close to that ride symbol. I think it's a little bit louder, so maybe I want to create an offset now. So it's really easy to do this. So you still want them to be linked together, but you just want them to be slightly off so that you can kind of compensate for that. So all you do, once they're linked together, just hold down the select button of the channel that you want to change, make your offset, and now they're linked together with that offset. You see that? Just be careful to not do it too crazy, because then it kind of jumps up on you. But essentially, you can kind of create that offset, right? And then if you decide that you want to marry them back up together, you can just do that as well. Cool. Awesome. So that's a little nifty. And again, we can still pan them left and right if we like. But now you'll see, especially too on the screen, if you look up here, if I make a change on one of these, you're going to see it's going to happen on both at the same time. So that's pretty convenient there. So now that we've linked our channels together, we're going to talk about DCA grouping. And DCA group is not the same thing as a subgroup, right? We're a subgroup where we can take our channels together, put them in this one group. We can compress that group. We can EQ it. We can do all this stuff to it. We can have that be its own output if we want. We can send that group to stereo bus so that, maybe if we want to compress our drums and whatever. This is not that. The DCA group is purely remote control. It's just linking the fader level to it, right? So if we get all our drums together and we just want to link together, we just want to make one fader that just controls all of the drums, we can do that, but it's not going to affect the sound of it. It's not going to affect the blend of it. It won't affect it'll work in a way that basically is just like a robot controlling all the faders for us with one fader. So this is a really great tool that we can use for volunteers as well, especially if we have a lot of channels. simplifying things to less faders for them might make it easy as well. So maybe some people like to put all their drums on one fader, then they'll do all the guitars, then do all the keyboards, whatever. Another way that people will do it, maybe they'll put kick and bass on one, and then the rest of the drums on another, and then lead guitars, rhythm guitars. Some folks will do sopranos, tenors, altos, right? They'll kind of split it up in parts. It really kind of depends on what you guys are doing and the worship style that you're going. So there's many different ways to do it. But if you see on your console, I've already got them set up for you. But a quick way to get there is, so again, if we go here on our bank select keys, we go to our outputs, we'll make sure that we're selecting DCA right here, 1 through 8. You'll see here on the console, DCA 1 through 8. Now, what else is cool is that you can see exactly what's in all those DCAs right there. You can see those channels, and actually if you touch them, you can select the channel to make your adjustments here in our selected channel area. So again, we're going to assign all the drums to one DCA. So a really quick way to get there is that if you just double tap the select button of that DCA, it's going to bring up a DCA assign mode. And this is where we can actually select all the channels that we want to be in our DCA. So you see mine are already assigned, yours probably aren't. You can go here and select what DCA group you want to assign for. So we're all going to do DCA group 1. And if you want, you can either do it on the left-hand side of the console, or I'll just do it here in the center to show you. But I can just bring up all my drum channels and just make sure they're all selected here. And you'll see them start turning yellow on those channels when we assign them. So just select all the channels that you want to assign to that drum group. So it's going to be all the drums, essentially. So kick and everything. So it's going to be the first 9 channels, right? And once you assign them to there, we can go to the next group, assign those channels, go to the next group. So you see that the rest of them are already assigned for you. But once we're done, we can close out of there. And if we go back and look at our DCA groups, you'll see that, now the drums are all there, and those are all our groups. Everybody following along with that all right? So by default, these are all named and color-coded for you, but you can also change the name as well. So just like when we changed our channel names, if I just go up here to the top and go to my DCA group, I can change the color of that. I can change the name of it to be anything that I want. So it makes sense that my drums are red. My DCA group that's labeled drums is also red for familiarity. But maybe you want all your DCAs to be one color because you want to separate the fact that, no, this is a DCA, this is not an individual channel. So you can do that as well. Maybe you want all your DCAs to be green or yellow, so you can do that if that makes sense. Yeah, so we can go ahead and close out of that. So now we've got all of our DCAs assigned. You also probably saw in that menu that you can assign mute groups as well. So I'll show you the other way to get to some of these assigned functions. If you were to go to channel job, which is just here on the right-hand side of the screen, and if you were to touch that, you're going to see this little green area come up, channel job. And that's another way that you can get to channel link mode, DCA group mode. You can also get to mute group mode, right? And so this is just like how you could assign to DCAs. This is how you assign to mute groups. So you can select mute group 1, select all the channels that you want to assign to it. You've also got mute group masters here that when you activate number 1, that's actually going to mute the mute group number 1. You can also use the dimmer function, and the dimmer will allow you just to essentially not mute the channel, but just duck it or bring it down a few dB, whatever you like. So maybe the mute group is not as common as the DCA, just because you can kind of use the DCAs as a mute group anyway. You just hit mute or turn off the DCA, and they'll all be off. But the mute groups are there too that you can also assign. So cool. So now that we've got all those channels together, we can get out a channel job as well, just by hitting that little X there. And so now we've got our channels linked, we've got our channels grouped together. We're rocking and rolling. So the next thing that we're going to talk about here is, well, we've got our channel set up, and we've got all of our input list there, and so we see here that this console, it's really great because we have a lot of channels to mix here. We've got 72 channels available to us, but not a ton of faders, and it's great because we got this nice small console we can put anywhere, but we want to make this as easy as we can and be able to get to things as quick as possible. So one thing that we've done is we've put 16 DCA groups on here, so you can actually break it out into a lot more detail if you want. You can, again, just do kick and bass, and then the drums, and and you can kind of really get pretty granular with it and have control over pretty much everything with those 16 faders. Another thing that we've done is we've put custom fader layers built into the console. And this is a really great way that we can kind of compress our input list. So for example, we've got our drums, but we've got our overheads left and right. Well, if those are linked together, I only need to be able to see and control one fader, right? I don't need to look at both because they're linked, right? Same with my loops left and right. Well, I only need to be able to see, as long as I can control one fader, the other one will follow automatically. So I can actually compress this, this input list down and really kind of minimize the amount of layers that I have to jump around on. So a really great way that we can do that is if we go to setup here, everybody just select the little setup button on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. And then we go to user setup. So the user setup is a cool thing. So you've got the ability to recall a console file, right? Your scenes, and that's going to have your EQ and your compression and everything set up. But you also have the ability to be able to recall users. And a user can log in and recall things like the user-defined knobs and the user-defined keys and your user preferences, right? And also these custom fader layers. So if we go to preferences, you can see all the preferences of the console. But if we go all the way to the bottom here, custom fader, you're going to see here that each bank, there's 3 banks on the board, each bank has their own set of custom layers. So if you go to the left bank, it's A, the center one is B, and the right one is C. So if we were to go to A1 here, you see that we've got 16 channels here that we can put anything that we want on. So when we're on this page, we're ready to assign. So all we need to do is select the channels that we want to be in that group. So if I select channels, go here 1 through 8, I can hit kick, kick out, snare top, snare bottom, and you can see that it's automatically assigning them to these faders. Go to hi-hat, tom, floor tom, overhead left, and instead of doing overhead right, I'm just going to go straight to my loop left. But instead of doing loop right, I'm going to go straight to the bass. Then I'm only going to do synth left. Then I'll do lead guitar, rhythm guitar. Just keep going down. Here's my acoustic, and oops, that's not my acoustic. That's my acoustic. And then I'll do, Tyler's vocal, and I guess that's it. So essentially, we've kind of compressed everything down here just to 15 channels of what we're actually really going to be controlling and what we really need to see. So now we don't have to flip through as much because we've kind of shrunk everything down. So when we're done with that, we can go to the next custom layer, and maybe we want to do a completely different layer because we want to do maybe I want to do all my effects returns here, or maybe I want to do a combination of inputs and outputs. So maybe I want to do it where I've got all my drums and then the DCA for that drum and then my drum reverb all on one fader layer. That way I can control everything with those drums at one time. Or maybe I want to do a one custom fader layer for my instruments on the left, and then I'll do on the right, maybe I'll go to C1 here, and I'm just going to do all my vocals. So if I go to my vocals, I can just hit vocal, 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 vocal. And I'm going to be able to control all that, right? So now on my C bank, on the right-hand side, it's going to be vocals. The left-hand side is going to be band. And in the center, I can just leave it with DCAs. I can put it in my effects returns, whatever I want. So it's kind of the cool thing. You can kind of assign it however you'd like to do. The other really cool thing is that our master fader, all the way to the right-hand side of the console, way over here, these don't necessarily have to be your master stereo left and mono outputs. Once we kind of get that set, we don't really play with those a whole lot, especially if we've got a DCA that has everything on it. So what we can do here is maybe we can put our money channel, right? This could be our main speaking mic and our MC mic, or this could be worship leader, whatever your 2 most important channels are, right? And again, you can just select those the way that you want. So this is going to be my lead vocal mic, and this is going to be my lead guitar mic because I'm mixing for this guy that plays a lot of lead guitar, and I got to make sure that that's up in the house. So now these 2 channels are those 2, and those don't change with layers, so they'll just stay there forever. So you always know where your money channels are. So once you decided that you're done, you can go ahead and just X out of that, and or you can just hit the setup button just to completely get out of that window. And now if you go down to on the left-hand side of your console here, just to A1, you bring that up, you're going to see all of those channels together there on that custom fader bank, and you can't really see it on the screen, but you'll see all those channels there. Or if you go to the right-hand side, you go to your custom bank, you'll see all those channels there as well. Everybody see that? So that's a really great way to simplify what you're looking at, and only really need to get to what you need to see and leave out what you don't need to see. And like I said, you're still controlling, if you got loop left on there, you're still controlling the right loop because they're linked together. You just don't need to see it. So that's a really cool way to do it. So so we've got our console kind of set up now. It's really slick and really quick and easy. You've also noticed that we've got these knobs here just above all the channels, right? These are our channel encoders. And you'll see here that you've got a couple different assign modes for them. You've got your gain, you've got your pan, you've got your assign. So the gain is pretty self-explanatory. This will control the gain on the console. And we'll get into a little bit more of this later. But the cool thing is here with the CL series is that if you have your Rio on stage, you can have multiple consoles, one at monitors, one at front of house, one at broadcast. And actually, every console can see and control gain if you like. You can also limit certain consoles. So I only want monitors to control gain, and I want everyone else just to deal with it. So you can actually change this gain knob to be digital gain and not analog gain. That way, you can control the gain on your console, but it won't affect anybody else. But we'll get into a little more of that later. The next button down is our pan. So that's pretty self-explanatory too. It's our panorama, so you can pan left and right, and we'll talk about that later today and a lot tomorrow, and actually building a mix and using that. And the bottom option here is the assign. We have the ability to assign this to be anything we want. So let's say we drive our subs from an aux, right? We can put that sub drive right there. Maybe we can assign this to be the lead worship leader's monitor, so that no matter what, wherever we're at, we can always make an adjustment to his monitor. Maybe we want that to be reverb. Whatever that we're going to probably access most often, we can put right there. We can also make it be whatever the last selected mix was. And so that can be kind of handy. And the way that we can actually select the mix, as if we're constantly changing, is right here on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see you got these two buttons, and it's just out of the shot. But you got your mix 1 through 16 and then 17 through 24, and that will change what send these are driving to. So if you want to select a mix, if you know, oh, right now I need mix 1, you can actually hold down, there he goes. You can hold down mix 1 through 16 and just push number 1, and now we're selected on mix number 1. Or you can hold down again and go to number 4, and now we're selected on number 4. So that when we make our adjustments here, it'll follow along like that, right? The way that we can get to this and tell it what we want it to do is, again, if we go in the setup menu. So we can go to setup, user setup, on the upper left-hand side. And instead of going to our custom fader, we can just go to user-defined knobs. And you'll see here, these are the 4 knobs that are on the right-hand side of the screen. And you can also do the assignable coder. So I have it set to mix 1 send because that's what's driving the subs. You can do selected send, which is where you can do that funny select thing, or whatever else. And so that's how you can kind of pick that. This also brings us to our user-defined knobs here on the right. So this is a really great way that you can get quick control of things if you want. So by default, they're set to brightness and the panel brightness and the name and so on. But you can, by going in here and adjusting that, you can pick a whole list of other things that you want to control as well. So they can be your dynamics processor, they can be your digital gain, they can be MIDI control change, lots of different things. The cool thing, though, is the touch and turn functionality. So if you see here at the bottom, touch and turn. So user-defined knob D is touch and turn. So if I go ahead, if I get out of this window, I go just hit the setup button to get out. A really quick way to mix is that if I just touch that send, I want to make an adjustment, and I can touch this send and make the adjustment, and it's really fast. A really great area where this comes into play is when we start using our premium rack effects, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but to show you really quickly, if I call up a premium rack effect, all these knobs here, I can just control all these parameters with this touch and turn, and it's a really quick way to get around on the console. So even when you're in your selected channel area, you can make adjustments to all your mix sends and your EQ and things like that just from this touch and turn. So it's a really quick way to get around the console. So now that we've kind of got this console set up, and we're prepared, and we know from our input list, we're not using these, so we build our custom fader layer for this particular week, right? Now we're ready to go. So now we're going to talk about building a recallable console file. So the goal of this is that hopefully we can get it to the point where every Sunday we can recall the same file, and it's going to sound 90% there, right? The big ways to do this is to make sure that we get the gain at the same level on the console every time, and make sure we're using the same mics, get the mic right placement, and so on. So when we start setting up our console, the first time that we do this and we build our default file, we're probably going to want to get the entire band in and say, hey guys, just give us a little bit of time. We're going to build this. We're going to, let's just record a couple songs. We can do virtual sound check if that works, but whatever we need to do to make sure the tone is right. And we'll talk about getting the right tone more tomorrow. But so once we do that, let's say we go here in our EQ, and so what are we looking at here? This is our guitar. So I might say, okay, so here's our high-pass filter. So you'll notice I can just turn on the high-pass filter there, and I can use this knob just to dial it up. And maybe the guitar sounds great with, take a little low end down, and maybe I'll smooth that up the front, whatever. So this is Jake's guitar, and this is because he always has the same amp every time. He uses a Vox AC30, and he's got a Tele, and great. So I can do a couple things here. I can store this as a library. So if I go up here to library in my EQ, I can now store this as Jake's guitar. Great. And now I've stored library 42 there, Jake's guitar. And you can use these knobs to kind of scroll between. There's some default presets in there. So you just scroll to an empty one, hit store, and now you can save that as your channel. Another really cool thing that we can do is that while we're setting up is, let's say we're setting up for a bunch of vocal mics. And we're doing a little bit of pre-dialing, so that they're not here yet, but we know that we're probably going to put a high-pass filter on every single channel, and we know we're going to do this. So let's say if I go over to my vocals, and so I'm working here. This is Tyler's, the first one. So I know I'm going to I'm going to do a high-pass filter, and I usually start my high-pass around, 130. Great. So we can all turn on our high-pass on, make sure we're on Tyler's vocal on channel 20. Everybody turn on the high-pass filter and dial it up to 132. All right? So instead of doing this, we've got, 5 or 6 vocal channels here that we're going to be working with. Instead of doing that for every channel, go to the next one, turn it on, dial it up, go to the next one. A better way to do this is that, so once we kind of got that set, we can go to copy here. And if we hit the copy button, now we're all copied. And if we want, we can go to 8-channel view mode, or we can even go to 1 through 48 channel view mode. So if we go here on the bottom here, we're going to look at the EQ for channels 1 through 48, right? So boom, there's all of our EQ. Everybody see that? So what we're going to do is we're going to copy and paste the settings to multiple channels. So if I just touch and drag across the names, you'll see that I'm highlighting multiple channels there. And then I can hit the paste button just up here at the top. And now I've got all my high-pass filter settings for all those channels really quick. Right? Did everybody see who did that? Yeah? Great. So so that's a really cool way to do that. You can also do it in 8-channel mode. You can see them a little bit bigger. Again, you can highlight them all and paste on there. So that's pretty cool. Another really cool thing that you can do with your EQ is we'll go back to our 1-channel view. And let's say that this is your EQ for Tyler's mic, and that sounds really great. But someone else comes in and says, oh, you know what? I think that is going to sound really good for a microphone. And you say, dude, I don't know if that's really what we want to do. So what you can do is copy their setting. So hit the copy button, and then you can do what you thought you liked better, right? And then you can hit compare. And this essentially will A/B those settings there for you, so that you can kind of make your determination of what sounds a little bit better, right? So it uses the copy buffer to kind of go back and forth. So that's another kind of cool thing that we can do there with our EQ. Another really great tool is let's say we're working here and we're working and we're doing this and we're kind of trying to see what sounds really good. And let's say we just want to zero it out, right? And instead we can hit the flat button, but that flattens out the entire EQ. We don't want to do that. We just want to flatten out this one frequency, because I got a whole bunch of other stuff going on that sounds really good. So if I want, I can actually just hit the Q and the gain button here at the same time, and it's going to zero out that one band, right? So it's a really quick way just to kind of get our settings going really quick without having to do too much, what? No, +1, no, -1, 0, right? So there's some quick tips for you. But so we got our vocals going, we got them all set up. Another library that we can store is in our dynamics processor. So they've all got libraries as well. So we got our compressor on, and we say great, and that sounds really good. And great, so that's our compressor. We can, again, go in the compressor library and save it. And we'll just say, Jake, vocal, and this is with a 58, beta 58, right? So great. So that way we know what mic I'm using, and then cool. So there's my compressor settings. But let's say we want to store an entire channel library. This is, we want to get the EQ and the compression, and we want to get the all of our monitor, our mix sends, our outputs. We can go here in the actual channel up in the upper left-hand side to channel library right here. And if we select that, this is going to be a macro, the entire channel right here. So then we can do Jake vocal in total. And again, we'll probably want to put what mic that we're on, 58. And that way we know this is everything. And this is also all of my sends to my monitor. So if I come back in the next week and I've got a 58 in my hand and we get our gain in the same place, it should be hitting it exactly the same way it was last week, which sounded really good because we spent time dialing it in and it sounded really good. And now I don't have to recheck Jake. Maybe I'm a little sick today, or maybe I had a little bit of cough, so I might make some minor adjustments to it. But again, we're 90% there, right? So this is a really great way that we can start using some of these recallable features here. So this will be maybe this is our start scene. We've got everybody set up. And you know what? Oh, Susie's playing guitar today instead of Jake. Well, great. We got our whole band going there, but all I need to do, I can recall that whole scene, but all I need to do then for Susie's, I'm just going to go to her channel, find her recall, and recall it. And now Susie's dropped in where, Jake would have normally been. Or maybe it's going to be Jake and Susie, so we can use one of those spare guitar lines that we've got to drop Susie in. And now it doesn't matter where they show up on the console because we can recall all their settings. Everybody kind of following along there? Cool. So that's a great place for us to for pause a little bit. So we've kind of talked a little bit about setting up our console. We've talked a little bit about using our libraries to recall and everything. I guess I'll just mention really quick, using the EQ, when let's say we're zoomed in here on our EQ, you can use the knobs here to make your adjustments, right? So you've got gain here on the right-hand side, you've got frequency on the middle, which allows you to, sweep what frequency that you want. And don't play with these too much yet, but you got your Q knobs down here on the left-hand side, and this will help us pick how wide or narrow of a frequency that we're going to adjust. So what I want to do here for the next few minutes is I'm just going to play some music here, and I just want you to get comfortable with the console. So just start pushing up faders, listen to it in your headphones, play with the EQ. Don't worry about necessarily you got to put together the perfect mix right now because we're going to go through a lot of that later. But I just want you to kind of get comfortable with the board and start asking questions. So we're going to take a quick break, play with the consoles for a bit, and then we'll come back a little bit later and resume where we left off. So.